Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Yes, he did. He gives it to Henry.
Quick snap. Breeze. Pass is incomplete. No flag.
4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Foles, touchdown.
NFL Week 9 was a really good week if you liked upsets. If you're a bettor and you like to bet the favorite, definitely not good for you. If you bet on a bunch of the underdog teams, then you had one hell of a week, because that's all it seemed. Either there was blowouts or it was upsets. There was hardly an in between. But that just goes to show you can bookmark Week 9 as the epitome of any given Sunday. And oh boy, did it give us a lot to talk about. Of course, I'm your host, Ross Allen, joined alongside Alex Kropp, and it's good to have him back after a week hiatus. Obviously, work life gets in the way every once in a while, but now the real job is starting here. So, Alex, how are we feeling after a Week 9, especially if you're a Niners fan as well, which of course you are?
I think kind of, and you just hit on that point a little bit, still a little fresh in the wound here, but with that Niners theme, red, we kind of have what we call the Bloody Sunday in every single NFL season. There's always that one week. Last year is, and for not for a good reason for Buffalo, but it seems like Buffalo is almost the barometer for these Bloody Sundays. Last year, it was they lost as a 17.5-point favorite at home. This year, they lose as a 14.5-point favorite on the road to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So just bookmark next year, whenever you see the Buffalo Bills as a double-digit favorite in their game, let's maybe pump the brakes on any sort of, normal storylines going into that week. But, yeah, it was an absolute massacre this week. We had double-digit favorites going down. I think going into last week before the Jets beat the Bengals, favorites of 7 or more points in the NFL were undefeated straight up. And now in these last 2 weeks, we've had a handful of those double-digit favorites losing outright. And so, again, the NFL, anything can happen. This is not like college sports or anything like that where there's a huge talent discrepancy. These teams can win on any given Sunday, and it makes for an interesting league, and it makes for our jobs a lot easier because it gives us stuff to talk about, and can't wait to dive into it.
Absolutely. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here. Appreciate that everyone that tuned in last week. Of course, Alex missed the all-time depression episode talking about Von Miller's absence. Just a depression week as well.
It was a great listen, though.
Oh, well. Yeah, if you feed off of sadness, it's really good. It keeps.
I'm sure the roles are going to reverse here when we get to the 49ers section of this podcast.
Oh, I really hope so. I'm going to need things to balance out. Of course, thanks for tuning in there. A couple guest hosts on a couple shows last week. Of course, everything over there on the social medias if you haven't seen already. Of course, find us on Twitter at 4th Round Radio and Instagram there as well. Appreciate all the views. I mean, we've been seeing a huge uptick in subscribers over on YouTube, listens and downloads over on the audio side. So really do appreciate all of you. So it's truly just been absolutely fantastic with you guys. But let's hop into things, Alex. And before we get hop into things fully, just want to tease brand new segment on this episode. Alex is in for a treat. We'll be asking him some statements here, and he's gonna fill in the blank there. But of course, as we start every show, we got to start things off with at least a little bit of positivity. So we got winners and losers. We're going to start with the winners. And Alex, I have to talk about them just because I don't really get the option to in this light. Normally it's negative this year. I finally get to say something about positive about the Denver Broncos. And in the week where they're missing Von Miller, missing some injuries, and what you got? You got rookies that have to step up. So my first winner of this week is the Broncos rookie draft class because they absolutely balled out against the Dallas Cowboys this week. Of course, you have Patrick Surtain, who's, if it wasn't for Micah Parsons, he'd be running away with Defensive Rookie of the Year. He definitely has all-pro potential. He was locked down this game. Javonte Williams, who's right up there with Najee Harris for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He had 111 yards, and he now leads the NFL in missed tackle rate with 37%. No other running back is above 30. This man is butchering defenses, and he finally got fed by Pat Shermer, who, I don't know, I guess had the epitome go, hey, this player is really good. Let's give the ball to him and have a really good player make really good plays. Fantastic stuff. I really don't like the genius is off the charts right there. Quinn Miners, of course, you might know him best as the guy that does not like to pull his shirt down over his gut. He balled out. He had a really good time in the run game here. Baron Browning, a third-round pick, is now the defensive play caller, and he finished with 6 tackles and a quarterback hit. Caden Stearns, a late day 3 guy, almost had 2 interceptions. He had 1 on the day, a pass deflection, and 3 tackles. Man, talk about this. Talk about for a first year in drafting with George Patton, he really did knock this draft class out of the park. And so it's really great to see them come into form, especially to demolish one of the best offenses in the league.
And I think the biggest thing coming out of that Broncos draft class was everyone was kind of clamoring, oh, how did they not get a quarterback? Mac Jones was there. Justin Fields was there. But no, they stood pat. They drafted Pat Surtain.
Pat, good one.
What was that?
You stood pat. That's a good pun.
They did. They stood pat, took Pat, and Pat is working out for them. He's been absolutely incredible. I mean, it's one of those situations, especially when you get to this league, and people talked about over this last 5 to 10 years, there's been this switch from that running offense to the passing offense, spread it around. But it seems like this year more than ever, there's been this kind of, shift of gears towards not offenses having a ton of different weapons and a bunch of receivers that'll throw out there, but they have that one alpha dog receiver. We're talking about your DK Metcalfs, your DeAndre Hopkins, your AJ Browns of the world. And all these guys, if you have a corner like Pat Surtain that is just an absolute lockdown alpha number 1 corner, it is invaluable in that secondary. And it just makes it just makes everyone else's lives in the defensive backfield so much easier. And someone who's benefiting from Pat Surtain, locking down those receivers is Caden Stearns. Caden Stearns was out there as a ball hawk, and that pick he had on Dak Prescott was incredible. You saw, and whenever you have a trips or you ever have a loaded to one side or the other, if you see that number 3, that most inside receiver, run that clear out, run that big drag across the field, there's always going to be something coming right behind you from the outside receiver. And Caden Stearns played that play so well. He led and dragged with the number 3 receiver going across the field. And then right as Dak Prescott took his hand off the ball, snapped his head back around and picked off him trying to go back to CeeDee Lamb on the dig. And it was just incredible to watch. And the things that they're getting out of this first year draft class, and this is not, one of those draft classes that takes a couple years to develop and is now becoming impact players. These are 5 guys that had a distinct impact and went into Dallas 30-0 at one point in Dallas, and 5 key rookies that were in the forefront of contributing players. And Javonte Williams, man, he is so incredible.
The dude is an animal. Talk about at least 1 angry run a week.
Exactly. And coming out of the draft, that was the big thing with Javonte, is he was the youngest out of the 3 big running backs, Etienne, Najee, and himself coming out of the draft. But he was far and away the best running back at juke rate and missed tackle rate. And he's doing the exact same thing in the NFL. And it's been extremely impressive to watch.
It's so thrilling to see a guy like Javonte Williams is running like how you expect Najee Harris to run through guys. But Williams is a guy that's a dual threat out of the backfield. He can make guys miss in space, and if he needs, he could just run through a guy. I mean, it's perfect. It really is a perfect combination. And to the credit to these defensive backs, especially looking at Caden Stearns and Patrick Surtain, you got your 2 rookies going up against at least pass-wise and points-wise, or at least yards-wise, I think it was. The Cowboys are the best team in the league, the best offense in the league, and they've been killing it against these cover 1, against these 1-high looks. What does Vic Fangio's defense and these rookies run? They run 1-high most of the game. Vic Fangio trusts his guys to do their job, to play their roles, and they did it perfectly. These guys stepped up into a big-time situation in Jerry's world as double-digit underdogs, and they knocked the ball out of the park. So as a Broncos fan, this season. I mean, hell, they're 5-4. They can still make the playoffs right now. Are they? No, probably not. But there's a chance. And at the least, you have one hell of a future to look forward to. So if you're going to put solace in anything as a Broncos fan this year, put solace into this draft class and put some trust and confidence into George Patton, because apparently he knows what he's doing. Then the next one I got to move to is a mix of a winner and a loser, Alex. And in the way, it's because one of the greatest things we saw this week is for the first time ever, the sack would have been the first time ever, but not only Josh Allen sacks, recovers a fumble, and picks off Josh Allen. So the winner is Josh Allen, and the loser is Josh Allen, because of course Josh Allen is better than Josh Allen, because Josh Allen is a better player than Josh Allen, and Josh Allen dominated Josh Allen this weekend on Sunday. You follow? That's
what happened. And if you're not following at home, just know that Josh Allen both won and lost in this situation. And of course, what we are talking about is everyone freaked out 2 years ago when Josh Allen was coming out, and then a year later when there was another Josh Allen that was projected to go in the top 10, the pass rusher. Your top 10 pass rusher out of Kentucky. Everyone was like, "Whoa, there's two Josh Allens now."
Is it going to happen?
And finally, you had this clash of two oncoming trains. Josh Allen train over here, Josh Allen train over here, and they finally came to a head. And if you were watching Red Zone over the weekend, oh my gosh, Scott Hansen was absolutely losing his mind.
God bless that man. He killed it.
It was crazy. I mean, it wasn't that crazy, to be honest with you, because it's really just Josh Allen stalking Josh Allen. But
it's just a sack, but it was way better than what it actually was.
I think it was almost the symbolism of these two forces coming together, and that's really what happened during this game. Is the Jaguars just came out and hit Buffalo in the mouth, and after Buffalo went down and got into the red zone in the first drive, they did not cross Jacksonville's 20-yard line for the rest of the game. And this is an incredible job by the Jacksonville defense. I didn't think it was possible. I thought they quit under Urban Meyer, but it seems like they are, whether it's for their job, whether it's for their own pride, it's definitely not for their coach. But they're playing hard, and to limit Josh Allen to no touchdowns on the night, and hold him just look so ineffective out there, and he looked lost, and it just always looked like he was backpedaling and losing ground on himself. And I mean, what Jacksonville did was incredible, and my hat's off to them. But I don't know how sustainable it is going throughout the rest of the year.
I don't think anything's sustainable as long as you have Urban Meyer there as your head coach, who's probably
he is 500 though after he had his incident. So maybe that was the galvanizing force that the team needed.
I really hope not. Oh man,
they'll do it again. Really, dude, don't worry about it.
Right? I hate that the Bills blew this, because I had a prediction after week one that Urban Meyer wouldn't make it out the bye week. It looks like he might just by the skin of his teeth. Now I guess I'll have to switch it to he'll coach one season. So I guess that's what I have to go with here. Oh man, damn you, Buffalo! You guys really
did it again to us.
You screwed the pooch. So you lose against the Steelers, and then you lose against the Jags, and I don't know what to think of this Bills team. I think that's the best way to put it.
I mean, their only wins this year have been the Titans, the Dolphins,
lost against the Titans,
or the Texans,
yep.
The Dolphins twice, and the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are bad.
Yeah.
They're not. They haven't looked that impressive.
You should be worried, and my Super Bowl predictions should be worrying as well, because preseason it was the Buffalo Bills and the LA Rams, both of which did not perform that well this week. We'll be speaking a little bit more about that Rams game here in a moment, but the last thing I want to give here in this segment is the last loser of the week has to be the Minnesota Vikings, because in forever they've been really, really, really good. I can't remember the exact stats, but they've been almost unbeatable when having a 14-point lead in the second half. They had a 14-point lead here in the second half. They blew it, and they lost in overtime. And this isn't in a vacuum, this wouldn't necessarily be the bad thing. You can still be a loser of the week by blowing a lead like that and losing overtime. But if you look at that outside of just this week, it's been such a disappointing season for the Vikings, a heartbreaking one for the Vikings so far. Because, of course, week 1, you lose in overtime to the Bengals. Week 2, you lose by 1 to the best team in football, the Arizona Cardinals. Week 3, you have a good game against the Seahawks. Week 4, a very winnable game against the Browns, and you blow it by only putting up 7 points. Then you barely beat the Lions in overtime, and then you barely beat at the end of the game. Then you barely beat the Panthers in overtime. You lose to a backup quarterback there in Dallas in prime time, so typical Kirk Cousins there. Yeah. And then you blow a 14-point lead and lose to the Ravens in overtime.
And just
I feel
to highlight,
so bad for my Vikings fans.
Loss against Cooper Rush. That's even more egregious.
Hey, no offense to Cooper Rush, but you shouldn't be losing games if you're a healthy Vikings team. Just
here's the issue with the Vikings, and here's the issue with their fans too, is they always have this claim that, we should be 5-2 on the year. We had all these 4 close losses, and at some point, the close losses begin to become less of, hey, this is just happening to us, and we're getting the short end of the stick here. It just starts to become the reality. And maybe they're just not good at closing out games. They're not good at, having that 4-minute drive to seal it away or making that final comeback. And, there's something to that. And I think you can look at the overtime period as a very big indication of what we're talking about here. And it's, Vikings are on defense to start overtime. You just thought that the way the game was going, the Ravens were just going to march down there and gash them to death and go get a touchdown and wrap this thing up. They get down to the red zone, and I don't forget if Lamar fumbled or turned it over
interception
somehow, but threw an interception. And Vikings get the ball on their own 35, 40-yard line. And you think, okay, go down there, get 30 yards, get into field goal range, wrap this game up.
Might not even have to trust the field goal range if the Vikings, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah, you're not in Justin Tucker field goal range here, but you got to think that they could get 30 yards there and get a field goal range. But what do? They go out there, they run 3 crappy plays, 3 and out, punt it right back to the Ravens, and then the Ravens march down in 5 plays and go win the game. And it's just little things like that where if you look at the stat sheet, you look at how Kirk Cousins did, how Justin Jefferson did, how Dalvin Cook did, they had, in reality, they had 3 big plays. Justin Jefferson, long touchdown. Dalvin Cook, long run. And then you had Nwangu with the opening second half kickoff return for a touchdown.
Fantastic play, but I mean.
Yeah, it was an incredible play. But if you look at those things, it doesn't lead you to why they really lost this game. And it comes down to situational football. And the Vikings are atrocious at situational football. Ravens scored a touchdown at the end of the first half. They can't get the ball going in overtime when they really need to go get a score. And so it's the little details that I don't think Kirk Cousins is very good at, and I really don't think Mike Zimmer is good at. So that's the real issue there. You got to fix the situational football part, and the rest of the 58 minutes don't matter if you can't finish in the last 2.
Thanks for putting his name out there too, Alex, because the guy that he might be, but at least not as much as he should be in the hot seat conversations is Mike Zimmer. If the Vikings don't see success or don't see a path moving forward with Mike Zimmer by the end of this year, he's more than likely out of there in Minnesota. And that wouldn't be the worst thing for their franchise, for the organization. And it's almost overdue at this point with the lack of success that we've seen from the Vikings. The only really time we've seen success for them is against the Saints in the playoffs. Besides that, not a whole lot has really come for this franchise. It's been a lot of choking in the playoffs or just not having a good regular season or severely underperforming. If you had the talent like this and you had the close games like this, but you just constantly underperform, then at that point, that's when you have to take a look at the coaching staff, and it seems like that's the road we're on, fortunately for Zimmer and his coaching staff over there. But that's going to do it for the winners and losers, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get into our buy or sell segment, just want to make sure, of course, you can find all of our stuff over on Instagram and Twitter, posting there a bunch of times daily. Got some great content going out there. Honestly, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here, Alex, so catch me if I'm being too cocky or whatever, but I've been putting out some decent memes over there on the socials.
They've been incredible. I think you're underselling it a little bit there. One thing we can expect from Ross Allen is great merch and great memes.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about. And speaking of merch as well, we got a brand new item in the pipeline right now, going through the initial stages of this. Hopefully in the month, we'll be seeing some pre-orders for Ooh, maybe I'll spill the beans and just give you a little trucker hat action.
I know we've been talking about it for a long time.
Yes, we have, and it's finally getting going. Of course, you guys don't believe how long some of this stuff takes. It takes a while. It takes a while unless you want to pay absurd fees for expedited shipping and processing and manufacturing. But of course, if you ever want to get this stuff out quicker, one way to help with those absurd fees is to go over to patreon.com/4thlong and just starting at $1 a month, get started today and help me get the show, keep it rocking and rolling. Man, Alex, I wasn't expecting to plug that, but here we go. I'm just that skilled at the plugs, I guess. I'm really good at shilling, if that's what you guys want to hear.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you get that after a little bit of experience here. But
get the whole package here.
Oh, you always get the whole package with Ross and AK. Don't you know already? And speaking of don't you know what time it is? It's time to buy it or sell it. Of course, if you guys don't know how this segment goes, I give you a few statements, and it's up to you guys, or up to Alex and I, but especially you guys down at home, in the car, going on walks, anywhere you're listening to. Of course, we appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen, but anywhere you're listening, go ahead and at least in your mind come up with your answer to this, or of course you can leave your answers over on the YouTube comments, over on our socials, tag us there, or best of all, leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. So I give you a few statements, and it's up to you to buy it or sell it. And Alex, statement number 1, after putting on one hell of a performance in primetime this week and making what seemed like the MVP favorite at this point look like his Detroit self at times, the Titans are now current Super Bowl favorites. Buy it or sell it.
You know what? I'm gonna buy it.
Oh.
Here's why I'm gonna buy it. I really, really am struggling to try to find any consistency in the AFC. The AFC is so bad right now from just a top end standpoint. You know, you have a couple teams that are interesting. You have the Ravens, the Chargers, the Bills that on a good day, when they put it together, they look incredible. Mm-hmm. When you have the Chargers go, up and down on the Browns like that on a good defense and put up 47 points. And then, at the time, it looked like a great win when they went into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs there. And then the Ravens, you can go from, dominating the Chargers to getting manhandled by the Bengals, who the Bengals, on the other hand, where have they been the last 2 weeks?
Dude, ever since I put them in the power rankings, man. Ever since I put them number 5 on the power rankings, they've screwed me.
And here's the problem. This is our fault. This is the whole media's fault. And
yeah.
Yes, I'm including us in this whole media, the media turnstile here, because when we finally anointed the Cincinnati Bengals as a team to look out for, a team to watch out for, put some respect on their name, they go out, they lose to the Jets, and get blown out against the Browns. And at this point in the AFC, the only team we can really say can beat a team that is also of that upper echelon is the Tennessee Titans. And they do it in a variety of ways. And someone who I think, needs to get their flowers is Ryan Tannehill. When he is against adversity, he shows up. And he is not one of those guys that does it in a flashy way, but he makes the right play. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's great on his legs, incredible in the bootleg, makes the throws that he needs to. He's not flashy, just like I said, but he gets the job done.
He's clean, too. He doesn't really have a lot of turnovers, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you have a team that just takes over the mindset of their coach and why they don't have a defense that jumps off the page stat-wise, it just seems like they do what needs to be done.
Dude, Mike Vrabel, one of the better coaches in the league. He just, if you want to talk about guys that can get a team to build around him and to join him in one common goal, I mean, it's the man that threatened to cut off his genitalia a couple postseasons ago.
That still might be on the table there. I mean, he just seems like one of the guys.
And I believe it. I believe he would. He's up there with Dan Campbell and biting kneecaps, man. I love that kind of coaching. It gets me going, man.
And I think it just galvanizes the team too. When you have a coach that's just absolutely insane and his biggest, joys in life are winning football games and removing body parts in winning football games, it just means a lot for that locker room. And so I've just been extremely impressed with how they've responded to adversity. And in that stretch there where they beat the Bills, Chiefs, and now they go into LA and beat that dominant Rams team. It's just been so impressive. And especially Derrick Henry might come back for the playoffs. So all of a sudden you get into the playoffs with a high seed in the AFC. Who knows? Maybe even get a bye in the AFC. They come out here and then they get to just add in Derrick Henry, the MVP through the first 8 weeks. It could be incredible for them.
It was definitely it was more of a pass heavy kind of game for the Titans. A defensive heavy game is I think that's what surprised me the most about this game on Sunday Night Football, Alex, is that one of the teams, I mean, we know that offense can be really good. You have A.J. Brown, you have Julio Jones, you have a good offensive line, you have the best rusher in the league, arguably the greatest rusher of all time. You have a good quarterback back there. You have a good offensive system. Like, you don't really have necessarily, like, big superstar names over on that defense, but they played lights out against the Rams. I mean, picked Matt Stafford off a couple of times. Byard had pick 6 in this one. They got the fumble recoveries. They looked good, man. This defense impressed the hell out of me. And I know they didn't do anything crazy rushing the ball on offense. So only rushed for about 70, 75 yards this game. But to still put decent numbers without Derrick Henry, hell, Adrian Peterson got a touchdown, man.
Resurgence.
Dude, he's playing right now. He played with the dads of 2 current rookies in the league right now. Adrian Peterson, I know is Pat Surtain. He played when his dad was in the league. And then, man, I forget the other guy. I think I forget the second one.
Dante Samuel?
I think it might be. Yeah. I think
wow.
I think it is, but I mean, at least to play with the rookies of the dads you played with. That's ridiculous. Adrian Peterson is never going to stop running the football. Hell, he's even running it well. So this team is super impressive. I will say that out of the AFC, definitely, because they are, although somewhat inconsistent, they're still the most consistent team. I know that's a very low bar there in the AFC. So they're the Super Bowl contenders out there, but current Super Bowl favorites. So gotta sell it just because you have the 8-1 Arizona Cardinals, who of course beat the Tennessee Titans brutally in Week 1. I'll give the Titans a bit more of a pass on that one. Week 1, still going through some stuff. Definitely their worst game of the year. Worst game than they played against the Jets. That's for sure.
I think with the Titans though, we need to highlight too. Their interior pass rush on Sunday night was so disruptive, and highlighting that Jeffrey Simmons had 3 sacks on the night. Danico Autry had a sack and a half, should have been 2 sacks. But
2 guys with 5 sacks.
It's crazy how much push they got through the middle of the offensive line. And if you hear any talking head talk about how to disrupt the quarterback, especially one of those pocket passers, if you get pressure up the middle, you will disrupt the quarterback. And that's exactly what they did.
They Aaron Donald in Aaron Donald's home. That's exactly what they did. The English isn't there, but the point is, so you understand that. So Alex sells it, or Alex buys it, and I sell it here. Next team up is, let's talk about another, stick with the AFC and possible contenders. There's a lot of contenders just because, it's wide open. It's wide open there. Not necessarily because any team is playing great, just because there's still opportunity because a lot of the teams have been underperforming there. But they now sit at 5-4. They got a win back, and they did it in really good fashion against a team that a lot of people, including myself and Alex here, were fairly hot on, or at least not hot on, but at least optimistic. So, buy or sell it. After their win against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Browns are now back in title contention.
And kind of going in the same theme as our first statement here, I'm going to buy this just because I think the AFC is just so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that AFC North is going to be tough. I think the Ravens are really good. I don't buy the Bengals. The Steelers, they're always going to be just around the top just because they have such a high floor. They're not going to get beat
It's
by
just
the
because they have Mike Tomlin. This
yeah,
team is living
what
on
he
Mike
does.
Tomlin.
He wins ugly games, and he wins games that he should win. And so
that's why he's a Hall of Fame coach.
Exactly. And the Browns, on the other hand, they have what it takes to beat every single team in the league. And I think the biggest part of this is they have a true identity. And when you remove OBJ from the equation, which I know we'll get into later, but when you remove OBJ from that equation, you have a team that is extremely cohesive. Everyone is working for that same goal, and they work within the system. Donovan People-Jones, Jarvis Landry, Njoku, the 2 running backs they have, all these guys work great within that system.
DPJ looked great this week. Talk about taking the roof off defense, man.
He's really, Donovan People-Jones was a nasty player at Michigan. He was a punt returner. He's a dynamic player.
Better than Odell Beckham Jr.
And he does what OBJ should do, but he doesn't have all the antics and all the demanding of the ball and having your dad go out and post a diss track on Baker Mayfield not finding him the ball
and the money.
And here's the thing is when you have a quarterback that is not a dynamic player like Patrick Mahomes, like Matt Stafford, like these guys, but they're system quarterbacks. And when you have a system quarterback and you implement this alpha dog or thinks he's an alpha dog receiver who demands all these targets, you're always in the back of your head. You're like, I got to go find OBJ. I got to go see if I got to go make sure OBJ is not happy or unhappy with the sidelines when he gets his targets. And you take him out of what makes him a good quarterback, and that's following your system, going through the progression, putting him into a run play if he's, if you have a light box, and switching it to a screen pass if you have a defender that's 10 yards off. And if you have a guy that just attracts attention from your own offense inherently, like an OBJ, it takes away from that decision making. And so when you have the Browns as they are currently constructed, they can beat any team in the AFC because they can grind you down with Chubb and Hunt. They have a good defense. They have an incredible pass rush. Their offensive line will continue to get healthier. And when you go to Cleveland or these cold weather cities in the playoffs in January and February, a team like that with an identity of, a ground out and punish you on defense, they can beat any team in the league. So I think they're definitely back in title contention, especially in the weak AFC.
Absolutely. And that the winner of the AFC North is still heavily up for grabs, just like almost any other division in that conference. And Baker, if you want to talk about OBJ, let's talk about how last year OBJ went down with that torn ACL, which obviously you never root for a guy to get injured. But just taking a look at that, I said that the Browns were going to be, in Baker Mayfield especially, were going to be better off without OBJ on that offense for the points that Alex just mentioned there. He doesn't have to eye him down. He can actually go through a healthy progression. He can spread the ball out. He can make defenses second guess who the ball is going to and not have to just double cover a guy and hope for the best, because they can. Now, you see it. I mean, the whole debate was, whose fault is it? Is it Baker Mayfield's? Is it Odell Beckham Jr.'s? And I will say that Baker Mayfield is not playing the best football this year. He is not. He looks like, and he is not a upper echelon quarterback in the league. He's always going to be above average guy, kind of tiptoeing the line between Pro Bowler or not. He's going to be around that area. He's never going to be elite, but he's a solid starting quarterback. He can get the ball into pockets. He can get on the move, and we saw that he aired the ball out against the Bengals this week, and he looked good. Odell Beckham Jr. was the problem there in Cleveland, and it shows. And they're going to be a better team without him. You don't have to worry about cancer in the locker room. You don't have to worry about a guy demanding the football. And you don't have to worry about Baker Mayfield feeling pressure from someone's dad to give him the football. I think that's the most important thing. And I still think that was absolutely ridiculous and almost just a parody of itself, because that sounds so stupid. That sounds like that sounds like an article on the NFL version of The Onion.
It's some LeVar Ball stuff.
Oh man, that's exactly what it is. Actually, that's the best way to put that there. I would say they're still loosely back in title contention, so I guess I'll buy this. But just like any AFC team, or any team in the NFL besides the Arizona Cardinals, I need consistency. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. I know it's a basic take, but that's what I need before I can really be concrete on any of this. And speaking about the Arizona Cardinals, let's get into the last statement here. And that is that the Arizona Cardinals running back, newly acquired this year, James Conner, is the most underrated running back in the league. Buy it or sell it?
Sell it. I think James Conner is still not a good running back. Here's my take with running backs is, again, I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I think you just have a handful of guys that are difference makers, your workhorse running backs that are difference makers every single down. Your C-Max, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Zeke Elliott when he was at his full powers, Jonathan Taylor's. These guys are just workhorse difference makers, and they have a lot of value above a replacement level running back. But then you have a handful of guys like your James Whites, your Nike Hines, your Chase Edmonds, these kind of scat backs, specifically role-driven running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have every single other, running back in the league that I think James Conner falls in that category was if you have great blocking, if you have a great scheme, if you have, open lanes, they can make, the plays that they need to make. And you can run into situations like this where James Conner goes into a great situation. He's now the goal line back in Arizona, great offense, a spread offense, running lanes are there. It seemed like he had every single run he had on Sunday was a one cut, make the move, and he's got wide open space. And so most underrated running back in the league. I mean, sure, if you want to say that, go for it. But again, James Conner, if you put someone like Melvin Gordon in this role, or if you put someone, I mean, even like if you put Latavius Murray in this role, I think he has, this similar output as James Conner. But I think it's more a testament to Cliff Kingsbury called a great game on Sunday, and we didn't really, at least me specifically, I didn't think Cliff Kingsbury was a great coach. And, seeing how he was able to galvanize that team, no D-Hop, no A.J. Green, no Kyler Murray, Colt McCoy, James Conner, they lose Chase Edmonds on the first drive of the game, I think, and they're still able to have James Conner run wild. And what do you run for 170 yards and 3 total touchdowns? It was something crazy like that. And it just shows you, I think, that with a good game plan and an offensive line that creates holes, you can have games like this from your middle of the ground running backs. And, I think we can point to the fact that James Conner was a free agent this year and he wasn't highly sought after. So,
no.
He's not the most underrated running back in the league, but what a great job by Cliff Kingsbury and that Cardinals offense on Sunday.
That's definitely a really great person to give credit to. And, of course, the stat that jumps off the paper is that the fact that he's leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns with 10. But then...
who was leading that category 3 weeks ago? Sam Darnold. So I don't think that's a category that really tells us how good of a running back or how good of a player you are. It's touchdowns to me are the most misleading stat there is, especially goal line touchdowns.
If you drop down to his yards, he's around 19th in the league. So I'm not sure if he's the most underrated running back in the league. I think for at least the position that he's in the role that he plays on that Cardinals team, he's really important to them. He is a centerpiece to what that offense does and how Cliff Kingsbury utilizes him. By saying that he's not underrated or by saying that he's not like this great running back, I don't want to necessarily say that because I don't want to discredit him, because for what he does and what he brings to the offense and what his role is, he does it amazingly. He knocks that out of the park. He is one of the best role players in the league, hands down. If you need a touchdown there on the goal line like he's used, he's probably going to get it for you. If you need a guy to make plays in space or maybe catch a ball a few times, he can get that job done. He might, if it wasn't for Kareem Hunt, he'd probably be one of the best, if not the best, RB2 in the league. Maybe besides you're looking, the Broncos too also have a really solid doublehead monster there in Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, which is one of the few things. I mean, if Patrick actually uses them, they could be really good. The touchdowns really jump off the wall there. He had a good game against the Niners, like you allude to, or a great game against the Niners, like you allude to. I still think maybe a guy almost like Darrell Henderson might be a little bit more underrated. But so I'm going to sell this statement, not to knock him, because he's fantastic for what he does. And I think James Conner is one of the best offseason acquisitions and one of the more under the radar ones. Him, Emmanuel Sanders to Buffalo, two under the radar moves that have been paying dividends for either team this year.
I think Javonte Williams right now is the most underrated running back in the league. Dude's incredible.
I like to hear that. I really like to hear that.
He's just incredible. He's on the trajectory to be one of those difference making running backs. And I think the biggest stat when you look at that is, do you make guys miss? Do you get yards after first contact? and can you catch the ball? And he can do all three of those things, just like the Camaras, just like the Dalvins, just like the C-Max.
He does. He makes people miss better than all three of those guys.
Crazy. The dude's got a trajectory like no one.
He was breaking more tackles than Derrick Henry was this year.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
He does it in multiple ways. He does it. He's so low to the ground. His center of gravity is so low.
Either
he
you
can
miss
run through guys. He
or
can
you
run
just-
around guys. Awesome.
He's been a joy to watch this year. In a pretty much joyless year, he's been so much fun to watch. And like when I went to that Broncos game there week 3 against the Jets, which of course was fantastic. It was a great blow. One of the last times I was truly happy this year. Let's say he scored the first touchdown in the corner that I was sitting in. So obviously I love this man. He's fantastic to watch. But that was going to wrap it for buy or sell it this week. Let us know what you guys think, whether you're going to buy or sell that the Titans are the Super Bowl favorites, that the Browns are back in title contention, and that James Conner is the most underrated running back in the league. Of course, a couple more segments to go here, ladies and gentlemen. We got our headlines. Of course, we're going to talk a little Kyle Shanahan action here. Of course, a mid-season kind of maybe conference championship and Super Bowl predictions here. See if anything's changed since the preseason. And then, of course, the news segment, which is deemed What the Blank. But let's let's send things into the headlines here. And, of course, had to have the week he's back on here. Had to have, and also after the week that the Niners head coach Kyle Shanahan has appointed offensive guru going against another offensive-minded guy that a lot of people didn't think was going to be great. Obviously, one's working out, one is not. But had to have the Niner fan on here because he'll know a lot more about this. And so the first thing we got to ask, and we're going to talk about here, is how long is Kyle Shanahan going to stay with the San Francisco 49ers? Is he the coach of the future? Is that 6-year contract a mistake? What's going on here, Alex? Break things down for us, please.
You know, here's the issue is Kyle Shanahan's done an incredible job at convincing everyone he's this massive genius. And hand up, I am completely guilty of this. I sipped the Kyle Shanahan Kool-Aid. I think honestly most people did. This narrative wasn't around until this year, and I think he was able to hide behind injuries and hide behind the fact that Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard were. I know it's Beathard, but I think Beathard's fine here. He's been able to hide behind those guys. It's, hey, these are my starting quarterbacks. Like I had a great record with Jimmy G at the starting, helm, and with these other guys, I don't have a great record. But now it's gotten to a point where we just need to look at what's on the table. He's got the same winning percentage as Chip Kelly. He's got a worse winning percentage than Mike Singletary. The Niners at home, actually in Levi Stadium, not when they went to Arizona and played in their stadium. They've lost 11 of their last 12 games at home, including 8 in a row. And that is unacceptable for any NFL team. I don't care how bad you are. I don't care how good you are. I don't care where you play. I don't care when you play. You cannot lose 8 straight home games. That is atrocious. And here's the biggest problem I have with Kyle Shanahan is he is so stubborn in his player evaluation and his play calling that he would rather watch the ship sink under his own call than actually, admit that he's wrong on some of these things.
Is he afraid of change?
Huh?
Is he afraid of change?
He's not afraid of change. He's so in love with himself, and he's such a narcissist that, back 2 years ago or 3 years ago, he loved Joe Williams out of Utah, running back. He said, and John Lynch came out and said this after the fact, that Joe Williams wasn't even on their board, and Kyle Shanahan convinced them to go up, draft him in the 3rd round, and he did not take any meaningful snaps for the Niners. Did the same thing with Trey Sermon. Now,
when was the last time you heard of him?
Ayuk, the same way. He really wanted Ayuk, and now he's not. He was in the doghouse for a little bit.
Yeah, at least Ayuk is. I'll give him. At least that's probably one of the worst ones because he's had some really explosive performances.
He started to come back a little bit, but I think it's pointing to the fact that Kyle Shanahan is so in tune to whatever he thinks is right. Is he's reluctant to make halftime adjustments. We really see, and I saw this especially in that Colts game where that first drive. Just gashing them with deep play action and throwing the ball down the field. Elijah Mitchell gashing teams with nice sweeps and different creative runs. And then you just didn't see any of that. And in the second half, and they came out and they didn't push the ball down the field again. And it just looks so flat from Kyle Shanahan's offenses. I don't know what the fix is. I don't know if he's still the answer. I don't think he is, but I don't know if we're in a situation where, we have the ability to move on from him because we've already committed so much of our offense and so much of our draft capital to fit the Kyle Shanahan system. So he almost kind of has the San Francisco Niners by the balls right now, and we are just getting dragged along for the ride.
Yeah, there's a lot more questions than answers we're seeing in San Francisco. I think there's a lot of good that's come out of Kyle Shanahan. I mean,
he made a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, he was. I mean, the Niners and Kyle Shanahan is one completed pass away from winning the Super Bowl. That's really what it comes down to there. There's a lot of pauses that we've seen, but I think it's this inability to adjust, or maybe not inability, or maybe it's more just choosing not to adjust and trying to keep running headfirst into a wall. That's kind of killing them there. And John Lynch is done. He's had a solid tenure there in San Francisco. He's done a good job as a GM up until now. He has a choice to make. Here. It's going to be really, because I mean the Niners have been able to, for the last 2 years now, this year as well, they've been able to ride the injury train. And I really think the last thing is, if Trey Lance does not show a good enough upside by the end of this year, Kyle Shanahan's probably out in San Francisco. I think his job rides on his job.
Here's the biggest issue I have with this Cardinals game is you walk into that game, you're at home. Right before the game, no D-Hop, no AJ Green, no Kyler Murray. And on the 49ers side, we get George Kittle back. We have a healthy Debo, healthy IU. Elijah Mitchell's out there. You have a healthy offensive line. You have Jimmy Garoppolo. And you come out and get stomped by who everyone thought was a bad coach in Cliff Kingsbury. And Colt McCoy and James Conner are the 2 guys that are just ramming the ball down your throat for 60 minutes on Sunday. It was an atrocious showing by them.
You got ran out of the building by Colt McCoy.
Ridiculous.
Who even knew? There's a lot of people that didn't even know he was in the league.
No.
Colt McCoy, man. Let's talk about one of the greatest quarterbacks Texas has ever seen. I mean, was it Texas and Bama where Colt McCoy got injured in the championship game? Was that the one? I had this really vague memory of me sitting in the living room real late on the school night watching the trophy presentation after Colt McCoy went down with injury. Don't ask me why,
personally, that's the thing. It happened so long ago. I couldn't tell you. If you polled 100 football fans, I bet you'd get split responses whether Colt McCoy was a coach at Texas and a backup quarterback in the NFL. It's ridiculous. How do we freaking lose to that team? It's nuts.
And not even lose. You get beat
back. Not even close.
At home, as you allude to, 8 games in a row. Maybe it's just Santa Clara. You think Santa Clara is a problem?
No.
Because they were good in San Francisco.
I'm done talking about this.
All right, fair enough. I'll be able to move on from there.
And the last thing we're going to do before we get into what the blank is we're going to take a look at our mid-season playoff predictions and see what's changed from our conference winners and from our Super Bowl winners. Of course, throw all the way back to the preseason stuff. I had the Bills and the Rams in the Super Bowl, and Alex had the Chiefs and the Bucks again, right? You had the rematch there. I got that right?
I believe so. I think I either had. I know I had the Chiefs. I can't remember if I had the Bucks.
I think I'm pretty sure you had the Bucks. We're going off a little bit of memory here. Of course, if you know, my memory isn't great. Alex is. I mean, we played football a while. You want to just blame CTE? Call it good.
100%. That's 1,000,000% the culprit for anything I do wrong in my life.
Oh, I blame it a lot. It's really an excuse. I'm not sure if it's good or not, but it's what I do. But let's take a look at these 4 teams, because halfway through the year, a lot has changed from preseason what we saw in these teams. You got the Bills, who we kind of talked about earlier. They've beaten bad teams and they've lost to bad teams. Not really a statement win there. You have the Rams, who look like one of the favorites, if not the favorite, going into this week after getting Von Miller. The offense looking good. Matt Stafford looks like an MVP favorite. They get messed up by the Titans, who've been a wishy-washy team. And then you have the Chiefs, who are not even going to make the playoffs this year. And then you have the Bucks, who I think PFF gave them a 17% chance to win the Super Bowl as of now. I think that's egregious, and I still think that they are the most overrated team in the league. Bar none, maybe them. I guess the Bills. I put them and the Bills right there is terms of the most overrated. But obviously things have changed. So I'm going off of mine. So I still had the Bills and the Rams. I could very well just change it to the Titans and the Cardinals and call it good. I think I will make a change, Alex. I will make a change, and that is the Bills and now the Cardinals. I got the Bills and Cardinals in the Super Bowl. One of those teams is going to actually win the Super Bowl this year. The Bills, I'm not sure why. I still just don't want to count that offense, McDermott, because they could be really good. That defense is still good. They held the Jacks to 9 points, so that's really not that bad. It's obviously the offense that needs work, but that's what I'm switching to. Are you going to stick with your guns, or are we making some changes?
I think I'm going to switch it up a little bit, and I think that's first off clearly because the Chiefs do not have the juice this year to make it happen, and I really think that the Titans have a great chance to make it out of the AFC, but a team that's been catching my eye and a team that I think got put over the edge when he finally broke the curse against the Chiefs actually is the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens, to me, if they can avoid the big play on defense, they are going to be in every single game because of Lamar Jackson, because of that offense. Justin Tucker he's actually automatic 60 yards and in, which is nuts. But here's the problem with the Ravens is they just get gashed in the defense so much. I think it was something like they allowed 19 plays over 30 yards, and the next closest team was at like 7 or 8 or something like that. So they statistically give up a ton of explosive plays, and if in those playoff games when the weather gets a little colder and in Baltimore it's cold and rainy and all those things, if they can limit the big plays on defense, I think they have what it takes to make it out of the AFC. And in the NFC, this may not sound like a fun prediction, but I think it's just going to come down to the best quarterbacks in the NFC, and I think it's going to be the Packers and the Bucks in the NFC Championship. And I just have to keep putting my faith in Tom Brady. I think we're just running out of opportunities to back Tom Brady, especially in a playoff situation. And we just need to savor every single last minute we have of Tom Brady in the playoffs. And I think the Bucks are going to get it done over the Ravens, but it's the cream's going to rise to the top in the playoffs, and I think it's just going to be led by the quarterback play.
Yeah, it's gotten hard to argue against Tom Brady in the playoffs because time and time again, we've only been proven wrong by that man. You can't doubt him. You only get bit in the butt if you do so, and that's one of the most heartbreaking things because every time I don't necessarily want him to win because most of the time he's playing against teams that I want to win. But that's just what happens. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and that's just what happens when you go against the greatest quarterback of all time. And that's what happens when you bet against the greatest quarterback of all time. You get burned. That's ultimately what it comes down to. But that's going to do it for our couple talking points there. Let us know what you think. How long does Kyle Shanahan have left in San Francisco? And who are the current Super Bowl favorites? And who do you think is going to play in the Super Bowl as of mid-season? We're at 9 weeks through a now 18-week regular season. So it's right about the time to start making those mid-season predictions. So before we get to the nay of the week, which is it's kind of a fun one, not gonna lie, especially being a Broncos fan. I can't lie, it's based in tragedy, but it's still kind of funny in a way that's going to hurt for my Raider fans. I'm giving spoilers, but I don't care for my Raider fans and for our UFC and MMA correspondent Blake Campbell. I already talked a lot of trash to him. He's going to have an earful, especially after the Raiders lose to the Giants this week, which is just salt in the wound. But we're going to bring it to our last full segment of the show. Brand new one. Alex is going to be on the line here. He's going to be questioned. He's going to be interrogated in what the blank. And by interrogate, I mean he's going to fill in the blank. Essentially, I have a few statements for him. And each one of them has a blank part. And it could be one word. It could be a phrase. It could be a sentence. Just has to fill it in with what he deems best. Statement number 1, Alex. The most impressive team at the halfway point is blank.
Arizona Cardinals.
That's
through
one.
and through. I think this is the only answer we have here. They've just been extremely impressive, and that final stamp of it was no Kyler, no DeAndre, no AJ. You go into Santa Clara, you stomp all over the 49ers, you take Kyle Shanahan's dumb hat that he wears on the sideline, you put it in midfield, you stomp it, you bury it into the ground, and you come out of there 8-1 with Colt McCoy leading the charge. And they've just been extremely impressive. I still don't buy them as a Super Bowl favorite right now, just because with any of these young teams, we got to see it in the playoffs before they do anything. Kyler's never played a playoff game. Cliff's never coached in the playoffs, and so we got to see it before we can anoint them. But yeah, they've been extremely impressive up to this point.
Statement number 2. The refs are blank football.
The refs are crucial to football. You might have expected a different answer here, but I think the refereeing in football is one of the rare instances where everybody loves to talk about how bad the refs are, how bad the refs are screwing up one side and not screwing the other side. But in all reality, the refs have so much on their plate, and they actually do a really good job of finding, everything that's happening on the field. And here's the issue with football is it's so subjective, and depending on what you're looking at or depending on what you're seeing is what you're going to end up calling. But if we ever got to a situation where we have replacement refs again in the NFL, we'll start to really appreciate what we have right now. So I think we'll need to understand we're at a good place right now with the refereeing. We don't need to keep thinking that it's this doom and gloom all the time. Because remember, replacement refs worth it.
Come on, Alex. I mean, I thought it went without saying. We do not use the R word on this show. We don't use that word. We don't use the replacement word, just like we don't use the other R word. It's these damn R words.
They're getting
Washington redacted.
Another R word.
It's taking over. I mean, I think everything bad is going to start with R in this league.
Yeah.
Oh, but Alex, positive with the Zebras, especially after Monday Night Football. I'm impressed by your ability to not be a Debbie Downer, because I do not have your power, sir. So more credit where credit is deserved on that one. And the last statement of what the blank, Odell Beckham Jr. is a blank wide receiver.
Odell Beckham Jr. is a cancerous wide receiver, and that might be a bit of an overstatement and exaggeration, but I truly feel that when you remove OBJ from an offense, especially one where it's not predicated on having a dynamic passing attack, it's just going to do wonders for the rest of that offense. And I'm not saying this kind of ties into the Chase Young segment here, but I'm not saying OBJ is a bad player. He has talent. He has a skill set that is desirable among some teams. But when you have a false expectation of what your role should be on a team, comparison to what is actually needed of you, it's detrimental to a football team. He was not helping win the Cleveland Browns football teams, and the team that picks him up next better have a set role for him and better have an expectation that he's not going to have that same behavior that he did in Cleveland, because that was a detriment to the team and did not contribute to winning football whatsoever.
And he's speaking to directly there, Matt LaFleur and Pete Carroll, as the two victims of who's probably going to get OBJ there. At least he's not going to San Francisco. San Francisco declined to claim him. And honestly, if you want to take a look, he might be a best fit on the Atlanta Falcons, but he's never going to go to them anyway. So they're not even worth talking about there. But that's what the blank. Of course, we have that on UFC Talk. We have that here. It could be a regular appearance of a segment. I know some of you guys loved it when we ran it last week with the UFC Talk. So, of course, keep it on for more and let us know what these blanks would be for you. But, Alex, we're going to wrap things up here. We're going to, before we hit the outro, of course, what better way to end every show on here than the Nene of the Week? And kind of as I alluded to about 10 minutes ago, it's the Raiders, and the winner, I think this might be the biggest Nene that we've ever given out, the most like the most deserving of this award. And that is the Raiders 2020 draft class, Mike Mayock and John Gruden. You guys,
and hold on. I'm gonna preface this statement with a very important statement.
Okay.
Henry, the fourth and long podcast does not endorse Henry Ruggs in any means. He is a scumbag. He needs to be released, never come back to the NFL, and he needs to be in jail for a very, very long time. Let me preface that.
Absolutely.
And make that a definitive statement.
Okay, let's do that. Thank you for the PR team there over at Alex. Obviously, don't condone that. Don't drink and drive, especially the NFL. Apparently, I learned this after the situation, but apparently the NFL has free drivers for all NFL players. You don't even need to Uber. You don't even pay for it if you're a millionaire. It's free. You just need to call someone. So do that. Don't drink and drive. Henry Ruggs needs to be gone forever. And that whole situation is a tragedy. I tried to make that clear last week. We're just going to do that again.
Having said that,
let's take a look at that 2020 draft class, okay? Because John Green, you guys did a fantastic job here. Let's go through it from round 1 to round 4. And let's talk about how they got beaten to the ground in terms of who won the trade for Khalil Mack. It wasn't the Raiders, because the two first-round draft picks, Henry Ruggs released. Damon Arnett just released because of his video on Instagram with him threatening to kill people. Obviously another thing which we don't condone. Third-round pick Lynn Bowden traded before playing a snap. Third-round pick Brian Edwards, 29 catches in 20 games. Third-round pick Tanner Moose released with 0 snaps played. John Simpson, 53rd according to PFF for guards. And Amik Robertson, 169 defensive snaps.
That's tough. That's really tough.
That's so bad.
Especially to have 2 first-round picks and not come out of that with anything.
No, not even. They didn't even make it through a week, 1.5 seasons. I guess technically they made it to 1.5 seasons. I just love in this show how we got to talk about the greatness of the 2021 Broncos draft class, and then especially for the biggest rival the Broncos have ever had, you go to the complete opposite side of the spectrum and you see how bad. I honestly, this really might have to take a look and really go through everything, but there's a legitimate chance that this is the worst draft class in the history of the NFL.
I challenge another one of our listeners to go find another draft class in the NFL that's been worse than this, because just running through that is it is hard. You have to try to miss that badly.
That's so bad.
It's atrocious.
It's so bad, and I think it's just hilarious. John Gruden, even though he's not with the franchise, he still has an impact for years to come. Oh, he wasn't the only one that needs to go. Let's take a look at the ownership and the GM there. And I think really the only guy that they need to keep at this point is a couple defensive players and Derek Carr. Besides that, who knows? But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our Week 9 breakdown of the NFL season. We're halfway through the regular season, and I hate that we're already halfway through. But of course, Alex is about to top off here. So Alex, thank you so much for joining us this week, and can't wait till next time so we can make fun of more teams and, of course, make fun of the San Francisco 49ers.
Thank you, guys. One of those things where we get to the double-digit weeks in the NFL and I shed a tear, but just remember, everyone, just like daylight savings, where we got an extra hour, we get an extra week of football this year, so treasure that. This is pseudo Week 9. We did not hit double digits yet. Just remember that. And cherish every single last football Sunday we get this year. No matter how much Tom Brady hates it, not even he could sway the NFL there. And we got 18 weeks. But, of course, huge shout out to our patrons. Like we shouted out at the beginning of the show. They are amazing. You can become one over for just starting $1 a month over at patreon.com/fourth and long. And a huge shout outs to Ray Rodriguez for all your card collecting needs. Go hit up at the Big Bat Box on Instagram. Shout out to Ryan Watson and Neil Wiley. I mean, what hell of a week. A lot of stuff to go over. And watch out, because there is an old episode that I will be republishing here this week. And oh boy, it dropped in January of this year. And it's more relevant than ever. Oh, I love looking at these old comments and just seeing how poorly they've aged and how ahead of the curve that Alex Drop was. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. We'll see all of you after week 10 of the NFL season.